G'day folks, Wren here, and today we are going to do my 23 books I would like to read in 2023. Now, I create a lot of TBR lists and, books I want to read at certain times. They very rarely get done. There's no saying that this list will get done either, but, why not make a list that I can then look back on and go, wow, that failed. You would have seen in my journal flip through, if you watched that video, thank you, listed down below if you want to watch it now. But in that, you would have seen my 12 of the year spread. And that is just a list of 12 books that I own that I really wanted to read this year. But my 23 books I'd like to read in 2023, these are books that I don't own, and I just really want to read them. So let's see if I read them. Okay, so the first book that I would like to read in 2023 is called The River Has Teeth by Erica Waters. I've wanted to read this for several years now, and I keep putting it on these lists of like, yeah, I want to read this so soon, and then I never do. Don't know why. But I have read an Erica Waters book before. I read Ghostwood Song, and oh wow, it was phenomenal. The writing was amazing. So I'm even more keen to read The River Has Teeth. And this one seems like it has like a similar vibe, I would say, to Ghostwood Song, in that there's this like underlying creepiness without it being like really overtly creepy. I don't know how to describe it, but like I just really get like the feeling of like being in a bayou and it being like slightly mystical. That's the vibe that I'm getting from The River Has Teeth. So the next book that I would like to read is Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. But this is the vampire book before Dracula, but make it queer. So like, hello, I'm there. I really liked Dracula. I read it in 2022 and it's my favorite classic that I've read so far. Love the vibes of everything. And you're telling me that there's a queer version? Like, hello, welcome to my channel. I read queer things all the time. I really want to read that, and apparently it's short too, so that's also great. Next up, I really want to read Lake Law by Anna Marie McLemore. I haven't read any of their books before, but they all sound fantastic. And there's something about Lake Law that I was desperate to read it in 2022, but it was really hard to get a hold of. Hopefully in 2023, I can get a hold of this book and actually read it. So it's about two non-binary teens, which is awesome. And there's some kind of magical world under a lake. Awesome. That's kind of all I need to know. Like, that sounds amazing. Sign me up. Next up, I would really like to read Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. I started to read this at some point in 2022, but I had to put it down because uni, and I had to take it back to the library. So I was really interested in the little bit that I did read. It sounded fun. It's like a haunted IKEA. And like, that sounds great. Next up is The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. Oh my god, I want to read this so bad. I know Katie Colson read it and loved it, which I always want to read everything that Katie Colson reads. Love her, what a queen. And I know that Ali recently read it. Also, what a queen. Want to read everything that she reads. Hearing Ali talk about it in 2022, I was like, sign me up. It was like there's this guy that makes a clone of his wife. Like, I don't think I can describe it well. And it's like a horror, so something's gonna be happening with this clone, and it sounds weird and a little bit messed up, and that's my vibe. Okay, next up we have The Deep by Nick Cutter. I got this out from the library and then I ran out of time, so I had to give it back, and I'm still really interested to read it because horror in the water. It's about people losing their memory and people are looking for a cure in the Mariana Trench. Ever since I read Into the Drowning Deep, which features the Mariana Trench, I've wanted to just know all about this trench because the ocean is a scary place because you're never gonna know everything that is in it. Like, that's terrifying. Okay, then we have a manga, which is Levius by Harusha Nakata. I first heard about this on Gemma's channel from Bookish Gems. Love her, what a queen. Want to read everything she reads. From what she described it as, it sounded very much my vibe. She said something about like gladiators. And for anyone that knows me in real life will know that gladiators are like my soul. It's kind of the reason that I got into archaeology, was so that I could study more about gladiators. So if there's gonna be some type of manga about that, I'm down. The cybernetically altered humans in an arena fighting. That sounds amazing. Then we have A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. I desperately want to read this book. It sounds so good and everyone's loving it. It turned up a lot in people's best of 2022 lists. It sounds great. It's Alexis Hall, which, Boyfriend Material, one of my favorite books of all time. And I desperately want to read more of Alexis Hall's works. And Lady for a Duke is a historical with trans rep, which is amazing. And I have been kind of wanting to get into historical romance a bit more, especially if it's queer. Then we have How to Be a Normal Person by TJ Klune. TJ Klune, my favorite author of all time. He can do no wrong. How to Be a Normal Person is one I've wanted to read for a really long time because there's ace rep and I am ace, so I always want to read about ace characters. I honestly don't know anything about this book and I've wanted to read it for years. You just have to tell me that it's TJ Klune and I'll read it, but add in that it's ace, it's like I'm there. Then we have Cosmonauts by Hannah Templer. This is a comic series and it's a sci-fi comic, which I love sci-fi comics, they're amazing. And this one is supposedly super duper queer, so you know I'm down for that. The first line of this synopsis is, "For this ragtag band of space gays." That sounds amazing. So next up is Snapdragon by Kat Leigh, and this is another comic. It's also supposed to be queer, which amazing. And the cover, doesn't that look amazing? But this is a witchy type story. Looks like mildly creepy, but like in a spoopy type kind of way. So it's not scary, it's just fun. Next up is Howl by Sean David Hutchinson. I've never read one of his books before, but I've always wanted to. His books sound amazing and they're all queer, so hi. Howl is a book that he came out with in 2022 and I did really want to read it, but because I live in Australia, it's very hard to get a hold of anything. But there's werewolves and there's a kid that becomes a monster who is actually afraid of monsters. That sounds interesting. And at least it looks like there's werewolves. And I am always down for queer werewolves. Next up is Blackwater by Jeanette Ario and Wren Graham. Now again, this looks like queer werewolves. I very much have a type. But in the synopsis it says, "For fans of Heartstopper and Teen Wolf." And hello, my entire personality. Next up is another manga, and this is Our Dining Table by Mita Ori. Now I heard about this on Katie Coulson's channel and she seemed to say that it was just like super wholesome and super gay. So next up is Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. I have wanted to read these middle grade horror books for ages because like middle grade horror, that sounds awesome. The covers of this series are also awesome. And just like there's haunted houses, there's spookiness, there's water things in like later books. Ooh, there's someone named the Smiling Man and it almost looks like a scarecrow, which is terrifying. Then we have The Many Half-Lived Lives of Sam Sylvester by Maya McGregor. I had vaguely wanted to read this in 2022, but then it just kind of fell off my radar. And then Kathy from Kathy Tryhard, I don't know if I pronounced that right, but for her queer lit readathon vlog, she read this book and just hearing her talk about it, it sounded so freaking cool. It's very queer and there are ghosts. Super my vibe as well. A non-binary teen with autism, and this teenager seems to see ghosts, so that sounds very cool. Then we have The Sunbearer Trials by Aidan Thomas. One of my most anticipated books that I still haven't read, and that's just a real shame. I loved Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. It was kind of everything I ever wanted. I also really liked Lost in the Neverwoods. That was awesome, so I'm really keen to read his latest book, which definitely gives Percy Jackson vibes, but make it super diverse. It's very much Latinx culture and mythology, and there are a lot of queer characters and trans characters, something to do with like the kids of certain gods, and there will be trials. Next up we have Bluebird by Sylvester. I heard about this on Liv from the Endless Pages channel. She was doing a reading sprint at one point and she was reading this and talking about it, and I was like, oh my god, sign me up. Pretty sure everyone else in that live stream was also like immediately trying to find this book. Because, let me read you this first line. Lesbian gunslinger fights spies in space. What more do you need to know? Then we have the Passing Playbook by Isaac Fitzsimmons. This book came out in 2021 and I've been desperate to read it ever since. But because I live in Australia, it's so hard to get books here, especially if they're not the most popular book. It's about a trans kid trying to pass in a new school, and he also plays soccer. And then I'm assuming he falls in love, and I don't know if he's gonna have to be forced to like come out as trans or not. If he does, that would be kind of upsetting. Basically any trans story I'm gonna want to read as someone in the trans community. Like I want all the trans stories. Then we have Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney. I wanted to read this in 2022 and I had it for a reading prompt for a readathon, and I unfortunately never got to it, but it was like my most anticipated read for whatever readathon that was. But this is a black romance and this first line sounds just great. An overly enthusiastic list maker who is blackmailed into completing a to-do list of all her worst fears. That sounds great. And ooh, I just really want to read it really badly. Then we have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This was one of my most anticipated reads for last year and I didn't get to it. I did request it from the library and I read maybe the first 2 chapters before I had to return it. But this book it's another black romance, and it is about a romance writer who kind of wants to like reach out from what she's expected to write, and at some like literary event she hooks up with someone and they have a few great days. I think there was something about like it flipping back in time, like flashbacks maybe, I'm not quite sure. But the main reason I wanted to read this is because our main character has chronic migraines, which I do as well, so I really wanted to read some representation on that. And even just in that very first chapter, you got so much representation and I was like, wow, I understand a lot of what is happening right now. So that was super cool. Then we have The Marvelers by Danielle Clayton. This is a middle grade fantasy book that I saw on a couple people's channel because I think this was like an Al Crate Jr. book maybe. I mean, the cover, that looks intriguing enough. You don't even have to tell me what it's about. I've also heard nothing but good things about this, so I'm really intrigued, and I love a good middle grade. Then the last book on my 23 books to read in 2023 is Transcendence by Shay Savage. I first saw this on Riley Marie's channel and she said that it was just such a cute romance and that she reads it every year. So that was a pretty resounding endorsement, so I really did want to pick this up. It's about a woman getting sent back in time to like the time of the Neanderthals, which is interesting, and it's told all from the guy's point of view. So he has very limited communication skills. He doesn't actually, you know, he doesn't talk like modern humans would, you know, there's a lot of grunts and things, and like there is no communication between these two, but they have to figure that out because they're alone together. And just something about the fact that this is a very historical type of historical romance. The point of history where modern humans aren't even a thing. That sounds fun, and the fact that Riley reads this every year and it's like a cozy read, that sounds great. Okay, so those are my 23 books I want to read in 2023. Have you read any of these? If so, please let me know how they were. Let me know which books I should prioritize over the others. I gotta admit, I kind of want to read all of these right now, but thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next one. Bye!